Provincial governments seem increasingly at odds with the federal government on a whole host of issues, not least a carbon tax. But on this and others, the new Premier of Manitoba strikes a more conciliatory tone.
I think that one thing we learned from our campaign is that Manitobans are hungry after these years of the pandemic and the divisions of social media, etc. Manitobans were hungry for a message of unity, of bringing people together. And I hope for the sake of our country that we can see that at a national level as well. And I do think Canadians want to hear more messages of unity and bringing people together. So I fully, respect the fact we're not going to agree on everything, on all the public policy priorities, but I do believe that we can still do the big things together. And so it's my hope that I can work with the other premiers of provinces and territories, that I'll be able to work with the federal government to deliver on some of those big things, namely improving healthcare and growing the economy in a way that is enjoyed by the average Manitoban and the average Canadian. So that's the tone we'll be taking, hopefully a constructive tone and a positive tone that benefits all Canadians and of course people here at home in Manitoba.
And one place that so far has stood out a little bit is around a carbon tax, support for federal kind of green transition initiatives. Manitoba seems a little bit more receptive to some of those policies than your neighbors to the west. Can you be a bridge between an increasingly acerbic relationship, especially for Alberta, but also Saskatchewan and Ottawa?
Well, I think that the first thing we need to do is ensure that people here in Manitoba continue to have a good quality of life, and that the bets that we've placed over the past 50 years on a low carbon future, that our province is now able to make good on those investments, that we're able to capitalize on the fact we have a low carbon grid, that we have advanced manufacturing. And of course, along the way, I do think that there's a positive, constructive message that we can send to the rest of the country, which is basically this. In other parts of Canada, when we ask people to think about clean energy jobs, sometimes we're asking them to engage in an active imagination. But here in Manitoba, for the last 50 years, there have been clean energy jobs. It's the people who work for Manitoba Hydro. Those are our roughnecks. Those are the people who are out in minus 50-degree weather with big winter boots on, keeping the lights on here in our province. And so I think the more we invest in building up Manitoba as a showcase for a net zero future, for a low carbon future, I think the stronger case that we can take to other regions of the country and say, you know what? You can do the right thing for the climate, you can grow the economy, and you can have really strong blue-collar, middle-class jobs. And so I think an investment in Manitoba is an investment in the future of Canada.
And of course, investing is one thing you want businesses to do. They have been doing it in Manitoba. Agriculture and mining are two places where we are seeing sectoral growth. How, as Premier, do you best clear the way for more of that, set the stage so that those are strong places that grow?
Well, I think part of it is us doing that work behind the scenes to ensure that we're fiscally responsible and we're setting the right conditions for investment. I know there's tons of work on the ag side where we have to ensure that there's the right labor force there. And so that's why investments into education and training, things like the Prairie Innovation Center in Brandon, are going to be crucial to ensuring that our ag industry can continue to grow. On the critical mineral side, on the mining side, we're going to lean into that area. This is a very important priority for our administration. And in addition to ensuring that there's the right economic incentives, there's the right economic playing field there, I think that our government will be able to make a really positive contribution to helping industry understand the best way to engage with Indigenous nations so that they can get projects online and that we can start to expand these critical mineral opportunities and hopefully also secondary processing opportunities in our jurisdiction. So basically, I think the view that we're going to take is that the best way to move forward with an Indigenous nation is to have the enthusiastic consent of that nation for a mining project, and the best way for that consent to be expressed is with a business relationship. And so we're going to put a lot of effort into that, and it should benefit industry by reducing risk, and it should benefit our country by ensuring that there's increased prosperity in the future.
We don't have a ton of time, but I'm curious about what you see as the biggest challenge for your province.
Well, for Manitoba, we are always, a country that, as I alluded to on election night, is sometimes maybe considered to be a flyover province. And I think the challenge for us is we want to let the rest of Canada and the rest of the world know about these amazing opportunities that we have here right now. We have a skilled workforce. We have an affordable quality of life where employees that you hire can afford to buy their own home. We have critical minerals. We have some of those key pieces along a zero-emission supply chain. What we need now is the right mix of economic policy making at the provincial and federal levels, along with private investment decisions to really unlock this potential in a way that, as I'm trying to pitch to you and your viewers, would make Manitoba a showcase for what a net zero economy can look like with advanced manufacturing in a way that benefits Manitoba, but also Canada.
And are you getting the support that you need from your federal government to achieve that vision?
We've had a really positive, constructive relationship so far, and I look forward to being able to deliver some good news as a result of those conversations very soon.
Premier, it is great to have you with us. We really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Wab Kinew is the Premier of Manitoba. Time for the takeaway and the virtue of doing hard things. If problems and opportunities are two sides of a coin, Manitoba's Indigenous population is a fine example. The problem for this fast-growing, young urban population is that when it comes to basic measures of health or economic outcomes, it falls far short of the non-Indigenous population and has done so for decades. That statistical gap can be measured in human misery and pain, but the opportunity to close that gap can't be ignored. That's true in every province, but in Manitoba, where a whopping 18% of the population makes up this group, it represents an opportunity to lead the way for other Indigenous groups and regions. The new government in the province has promised action for all on healthcare and social housing, both areas where Indigenous people suffer worse outcomes. So meaningful change on either will have a positive impact on the Indigenous population there. But put another way, making improved outcomes for Indigenous peoples the goal is actually the low-hanging fruit in changing the systems for the better. Of course, there are issues that are very specific to the lives and experiences of Manitoba's Indigenous peoples, and those are in dire need of attention. Manitoba has both a large number of Indigenous people who live in urban centers and a large number of First Nations who live on reserve. The needs and opportunity for improvement are different for both groups. But reconciliation is part of the process towards better outcomes. And one thing everyone agrees upon, reconciliation is meaningless unless it is with the full partnership and indeed led by Indigenous people themselves. Premier Kinew is leader for everyone in the province, but he brings a unique perspective to the role and these issues. My takeaway, being Indigenous himself doesn't mean Premier Kinew is a sure thing to make inroads on some very tough issues. But one thing does seem sure, and that is that it can't hurt. That's Taking Stock for this week. I'm Amanda Lang. Thanks for being with us.